just. So, hi Ruth, thank you so much for coming to chat with us today virtually. We're delighted to have you, and we're just so interested in learning a little bit about where you went to college, I suppose, first of all, and what advice you give us. And I suppose you're working as an architect now, so just to give us some idea about that. Now, we haven't really a load of questions asked at the moment or put together, but we're going to just go with it organically, and we're going to just see what comes up. And hopefully the lads will just kind of respond to whatever is coming up in the general conversation. Okay. So can you tell me, so Ruth, you went to Waterford, isn't that right?
Yeah, I went to WIT there. So just a bit of background just for yourselves when you're applying. I know you've probably gone through the whole CEO application process already. I was changing my mind right up until the very end, and I wasn't aware that when you apply to architecture college or architecture schools, that sometimes you can submit a portfolio, and that can account for a certain amount of points. So you can make up points using a portfolio. So it's good to know for yourselves if you have a particular college that you want to apply to even contact the school, the department, or the School of Architecture, and they're very good for giving you some guidance. So anyway, yeah, I ended up going to Waterford, and it is broken into, so there's a few different, I think Limerick is a 4-year course, Dublin's 5 years, and they split it into 2 parts. So I got a level 8 degree after 3 years in Waterford, and then I got my master's, or my second level 8 degree in Waterford after another 2 years. So it's split up into 2 parts, they usually call it part 1, part 2, and part 3. So again, I didn't really know a lot of this before I started studying architecture. After you complete your part 2, you're usually qualified to work in an office, but you can't legally call yourself an architect or sign off as an architect until your part 3 is completed. So usually part 1 and part 2 is done with the university, and you get your level 8s, and then the part 3 you have to do after maybe 2 to 3 years of working in an office, and it usually involves a case study, and it's more to do with the legal side of signing off and maybe owning your own practice down the line. So
okay,
yeah.
So that's a lot of information there, so I just want to clarify it there, and the lads might help me. So basically, are you saying that you got a degree after 3 years in Waterford?
So yeah,
level 8
degree. So it was a Bachelor of Science in Architecture, and to be honest, it's a level 8 degree, and some people after that decided that they wanted to veer into something different. You could go on and do a master's in graphic design. It's kind of one of those things that after 3 years, and it is quite good, gives you the opportunity, if after 3 years, like, okay, I really like design and I like X, Y, and Z, but I'm not sure if architecture is for me, you can kind of veer into something else. So like from that point of view, it is good. And a lot of people do take a year out after the 3 years and maybe do a year in with an office. So you'd work as an intern for a year, and usually after that you kind of have a good idea of whether or not you'd like the job. And
yeah, so it sounds like a very good foundation, and it kind of gives you an overview of everything, which you come out with an actual level 8 degree after it, and you can kind of then specialize then in another area. So Ruth, you're saying that you specialize then after that 3 years.
After 3 years, you go back and it's your degree in architecture. Yeah. So after that, you're qualified to work and as an architectural assistant. You're still not an architect. And that's the thing that, a lot of people might not realize, is that after doing 5 years in college, you're still not legally allowed to refer to yourself as an architect. You have to do another 2 years with either DIT or UCD to get your part 3. So that's what they usually say. It's split up into part 1, part 2, and part 3.
And so the part 3 is where you get the accreditation and the kind of
Ex-
the license to practice as an architect. Okay, so
Exactly.
it sounds like a
Engineers,
long. Sorry, Ruth.
I was just going to say engineers have a similar setup in that they have to get chartered. So they do a similar process. Like,
Okay.
you know, after they have their degree too, they have to go and try and get their chartership. So it can be minimum 7 years.
Wow, yeah, yeah. It's a
Yeah.
long old process, isn't it?
And a few years in between.
So
So,
yeah, so you know, you'd have to be fairly passionate about it, wouldn't you?
yeah.
So you at the moment, like you're working in an architect, like actually just going back to college for the moment, just to talk about college, like, you know, it's a very different type of college experience than, let's say, you know, another person doing an arts degree or something like that, because from what I remember, it's a very hands-on degree, isn't it? Where you have a lot of long hours and a lot of project work. Would that be right?
Yeah, so it's you really like if you like it, it's one of those things where it is enjoyable, but you won't have the normal student life as they, you know, you won't be out 3 and 4 nights a week or
Hear
I
that
don't
now.
know.
Right.
You
But
know,
now,
I suppose
Ruth, I remember you had quite a good time now in college, so don't be painting it all as being very, you know, work orientated here at all. I mean, I remember a lot of stories of great nights out, but you're not going to share those with us. So you're saying that there was a lot of hard, long nights as well.
there is, it's, and like I won't lie, it's enjoyable, but it's a really tough course. And it's kind of like the marking is very subjective as well. So you could pour hours and sleepless nights into work, and depending on the lecture that you have, they might agree or disagree. And it does set you up for the real world and what it's like working for clients in an office. But it's intense. But again, if you're artistically inclined and enjoy that, then like at times it's tiring, but it's worth it. And you know, it depends. It depends on where you get your if you get a buzz from that kind of thing, then it's great.
Yeah,
But,
yeah, very good, very good. Yeah, so it's like you pour your heart into something, and it's very, you know, you're speaking from your own. I suppose because it's so creative, it becomes very much part of you. So
yeah,
you want to be well able to have a tough enough skin to be able to take that maybe somebody else might
criticism.
not like your work because it's just not their thing or something like that, you know. You'd have to be clever about who you were working for as well. Like if you did a lecturer who's into something particular, you want to nearly be like, you know, working towards that idea as well, which is going to go away from your own innate creativity, I suppose, in one sense. Guys, have you any kind of questions coming up for you at the moment?
Not at the moment.
Not at the moment. We're okay. We'll move on. Am I doing okay? So I
Yeah,
kind of
fine.
okay. So you see, I have to ask for my affirmation. So anyway, so that was it. Life in college was you had to strike a balance, but there was a lot of hard work and a lot of late nights trying to do stuff. And because the work is so subjective, it kind of helped you be set up for the real world, in the sense that not everybody's going to love your designs, no matter how much
Yeah,
you pour into it. But that's not a bad thing, because I suppose it makes you quite resilient. And
yeah. It's a reflection. It is a true reflection on what it's like in, you know, in the real working world too. So
yeah,
at times we used to think, God, this is so cruel, and you know, like that. If you put so much work into something, you'd at least pass.
I know.
And you know, but
Not
it
always.
like just being honest about. It's a tough course, but most people will tell you that. I think it's one of the harder ones out there. But
Yeah,
as if you like tech graphics or art and maths, and they're the subjects that you kind of get lost in, then it might be something to consider. You know, it might be
yeah,
the
yeah. And Samson, you're definitely into the tech graph. Are you as well, David? Yeah, they both love the tech graph, you know,
Yeah.
and they're very, very good in it. And as you say, getting lost in that is if you're lost in it and you love it, then this is the course for you, I suppose, isn't it? You know, that would be.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, I will say that there's two, you can become an architect or an architectural technologist, and the architectural technologists would be like, so architecture would be more artistically inclined, you know, it's all about concepts and ideas. Architectural technology is actually, there's more of a definitive answer, and it would be more graphically geared, you know, in terms of if you enjoy, you know, because tech graph, there's always kind of a right and wrong answer, that it might be worth considering looking at architectural technology. And I know, like, it's a very good course, and a lot of offices would value their technologists as much, or if not more, than the architects, because of, at the moment, you know, you've people want to invest in low energy homes, and it's all about how the building's detailed now, because we're trying to reduce our carbon emissions and reduce our energy. So that would be that side of it. So might be worth looking into that too, if that would be.
What's kind of involved in the architectural technologies?
Just saying,
So,
yeah.
Like, to give you an example of like what I do in the office and what a technologist does, I will be preparing drawing with a client to go for planning permission. So I could be working on a scheme where you're designing, you're kind of designing to regulations, but you're designing to your local development plan guidelines, and like preparing the drawings, submitting them in, and that's kind of what I would do day to day. Whereas a technologist would be taking those drawings and drawing them up in detail. So like I'd show an indicative wall, but you know, the build-up hasn't been agreed. The technologist then would say, okay, what type of construction is it? How are we going to achieve an A rating on the building? Everything down to nuts and bolts. It's about the detail of the building, and then they'd be in charge of going out to inspect to make sure that everything is built in accordance with the drawings, and the drawings are then built in accordance with the regulations. So they have a really important job at the end of the day, because that's when something actually gets built.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you're saying even down to the nuts and the bolts.
Well, you know, like.
I know. So it's the detail. It's absolutely the detail and everything. Yeah.
Like down to windowsill details, everything. It's and so there'd be drafting involved, like they draft, but it'd be more detailed drafting.
Yes. Very good. So and what's your job like now, Ruth? You know, you're are you at home at the moment with COVID, or what way do you work?
So I'm on maternity at the moment, but before maternity I was working in the office, because construction was considered
Essential.
essential. So we had a system whereby it was kind of at half capacity. Now, if people wanted to work from home, they could, but I preferred, because I got a new job a couple of months ago, and I was learning a new software package, and I just preferred to be in to ask questions when, you know, so yeah, so that's it. But in general, like pre-COVID, you'd work in, you know, an office environment, and it is predominantly computer, you know, it's using CAD or Revit or BIM. So like the thing I would say as well is there's very little hand drawing involved, unless you go to an office that deals primarily in hand drawing, which is very, very few. There's very few of them now.
So it's more like computers than it is drawing.
Yeah.
So you were mentioning about software packages there. Is there any software packages that the lads could be looking at, even now at this stage?
Yeah, like I mentioned CAD. CAD is actually kind of probably will be obsolete in the next 5 to 10 years. It's Revit and ArchiCAD would be the two that we do in our office. So you build everything in 3D. And again, like, because I loved drawing, it's more about inputting data as opposed to drawing up something in 2D. So you'd kind of almost input like a wall. If you were to look at a wall, traditionally it'd be drawn in 2D or, you know, in plan or in section, and you'd draw in the insulation and your block, or, you know, depending on if it's timber frame or block wall. Whereas now you just type it in. So it's all information, data input, and the measurements, again, it's all measured. So it is changing. It's a lot more, what would you say? It's a lot more, all the words gone out of my head now. Not robust, but I think they're trying to reduce any case for issues arising on site. Sorry, it's baby brain, Fiona.
That's okay. That's okay. I didn't want to say it. I was waiting for you to say it, but that's okay. I understand about that. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So just so that you know, like it's because sometimes, and I know I was the same, I'd look at Dermot Bannon and, you know, and even the Bungalow Bliss series at the moment, and they're all sketching and it's all very like nice and looks really, you know, fun. And like there are times, but it's very few and far between. It's usually, yeah, it's computers. You're working with computers.
And so like because I know you got a H1 in your art and Leaving Cert, so you just love art and you're exceptionally good at it. So from your point of view, you're probably missing that side in one sense, are you?
Yeah, definitely.
You miss that side because it's gone so computerized now going forward, you know. And
Yeah,
the lads here, are you artistic as well?
Yep, I do art.
Yeah, you don't do art as well. David is very interested in interior design as well. He's got a particularly keen interest in that. And Samson does the art, so he loves his art as well. So they're definitely artistic, aren't you?
Yeah.
Yeah, both of you.
Yeah.
So yeah, so the hours, you know, like what's the work-life balance now and everything, you know, just for you at the moment?
Yeah, so like I would say, you know, some people have the idea that architects make a lot of money. It's not. It, like, you know, it's a competitive industry out there, and for the work and hours you put in, like you can get an average wage, but just, I know, like it's things I would have liked to have known as well before I went into you know, studying something for 7 and 8 and not, you know, 10 years, like but yeah, the hours, then it depends on the office. And again, I will, to be honest, the hours can be very late and unpaid, unless you get stuff that are pretty good for looking after their staff. So the office I'm in at the moment is great, and they pride themselves on being an office that hasn't had anybody leave to go to another office. But that's
great.
Yeah, and there are offices out there that are pretty good, but you have to be very careful about where you go, because I suppose it's like any job, you know, there's, but it seems to be quite common in architecture that you'd have
a lot
offices,
of movement.
long hours and unpaid. So,
yeah, so people then would kind of say, well, you know, I need a bit of a work-life balance, and I need a bit more well-being in my work life. So as a result, then there's a bit more movement from offices if that isn't kind of the climate in the office. But as you say, it's everywhere. It's the same in any work life. But so far you're having a very positive experience in your office. Guys, have you any other questions there? Have you anything that's coming to mind? Yeah. So that's great, Ruth. I won't delay any longer now, but like, thanks so much for taking the call. And there's definitely loads of food for thought there.
Yeah.
Have you anything else that you could kind of advise them? Any recommendations? Going back to the portfolio now, for example, would that be something that would be, they're in 5th year now, right? Would it be worthwhile then starting to work on a portfolio at the moment?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I know in college, what they really tried to get us to do was freehand sketching. So if it's something, if you like, you're both artistic anyway, is to start, buy a little A5 sketchbook, and even if you're out and about having a coffee and you notice something, a detail, like even if it's a coin detail on the side of a building, to start doing freehand sketches. and you could submit a copy of that with your application. It definitely does help, especially if there's a particular college that you want to get into.
Yeah.
It,
Very good. So a good little tip there, Ruth. You know, I think you're after freezing on us a little bit. Yeah, you're back again. So,
sorry.
so good tip there, an A5 sketch pad, and
Yeah.
just have it going around there in your bag and be able to pop it out whenever you see something that's sort of interesting in architecture.
Yeah.
And when they're traveling, if they're on holidays or anything else that just sort of, you know, looks interesting, and you could be sketching it away and that kind of thing. Yeah.
Good practice, like.
So it doesn't have to be like a big, huge project that you took part on. It's all those small little sketches just to show what you find interesting and what stands out to you.
It's like, I know if the two guys do TG is that you understand 3D and scale, and you know, simple things like that, because it's something you take for granted when you're naturally artistic or good.
She's gone again. Yeah. She'll be back there. Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, there you are again. So that's great. Yeah. So sometimes you take it for granted when, like, for me now, for example, I wouldn't have any training in art, but I have a little bit of a flair for it, but I wouldn't know what I was doing. Do you know what I mean? Whereas the lads here now with their art and their DCG and their interest in interior design would possibly have a more innate talent for that. So just to kind of keep allowing yourself express it and record it and write it down and draw it and things like that.
Absolutely. So showcase your awareness, your spatial awareness and your ability to understand scale and 3D and isometric, you know, like definitely. And yeah, even if it is an interior design college, it's like if you end up going into any kind of line that's kind of artistically there's an artistic background too, it'll definitely give you an edge.
Yeah. So that's great. That's great advice now, and that's something that they could be just collectively doing as they're going along, and then it's not a big deal then when they're trying to put a portfolio together, that in itself is part of the portfolio. It's that kind of,
yeah, absolutely. And it's almost like a storybook, so it's, you know, they can be quite lovely to look through, like if you were to photocopy it and send it through as a little booklet in with your application. Yeah, I would.
That sounds like a great idea, guys, isn't it? Yeah, that's a really cool idea. Yeah.
And
it is a storybook because it's telling you a story about where you've been and, you know, what's interesting to you. There's a lot to be told there in that little piece of information. Very subjective, and it's like a little, it's instead of writing like somebody would be doing when they'd be journaling, it's like journaling you're writing through illustration, isn't it?
There's a great book, and I'll send you the link on, Fiona. It's called Drawing on the Left Side of the Brain. And it's a book that they recommend most first-year architecture students get. And again, it's all different techniques. So drawing with your left hand. So you could even, if you were kind of finding it hard to start that, you could just go through it and start trying out different techniques to kind of push your own limits. Yeah, I'll send you on the link to that book.
Fantastic.
Anyway.
So it's a link for a book.
Yeah.
Just I can send that on to the lads then, and they can kind of develop that as well. Brilliant. So look, thank you so much for taking the call. It was very short notice.
No.
And I just got the idea there last night, and I said, I think I'm going to bother Ruth now tomorrow, and hopefully she'll be able to do it. And enjoy the rest of the maternity leave. Yeah. You know, enjoy the time off. When is the due date again?
Friday.
Oh my God. Yeah, so at least we hopefully we might have brought on the labor this, you know, bring it on. You know the way they recommend people have curries and things like that.
Yeah.
You could just recommend a Zoom call with those guys.
Well, I was going to say, if you have any other questions as well, like Fiona, you can send them on to me, because I know it's a lot of information to take in, and I remember being confused too and kind of being like, what? And
Well, you see, they're lucky at this stage because they're really in the exploratory stage of the career investigation. So they're not under pressure to make a decision. They don't have to make a decision by the 1st of February. So it's all kind of just, letting things, looking at things, investigating things, reading up about different subjects and different courses that are there, and just letting that kind of ruminate and percolate, I suppose, over the next 6 months. And then I suppose by this time next year they might have a better and clearer pathway where they want to go. So we're lucky there, we've got time.
Yeah, and I was going to say you probably didn't get to do work experience.
Not really, you see.
I
That's the problem.
was kind of lucky. I got to kind of like go to a few things, but yeah, I think I kind of made the most of it, but like not as much as that you probably would.
Yeah, Samson, didn't you work with your uncle with stonemasonry? Isn't
Stone
it?
carving, yeah.
Stone
Ah.
carver. Yeah, so that was
True.
really interesting.
Yeah,
And that's something you'd be nearly thinking about doing
Yeah.
as well. He's, I could imagine him as a sculptor. I actually could, Michelangelo.
it's funny, there's a lot of people that I was in college with, and again, after the 3-year course, went on to do cabinet making or specialize in lime plaster, like it real niche and stonework. So
That's
it's
amazing, yeah.
Yeah, like it's
yeah,
something that you can kind of like have, like it's like a base skill kind of architecture. Like you can kind of do the 3 years and then maybe go and do like I don't know, apprenticeship or something like that.
Yeah, really specialize. Yeah, very niche kind of an area.
the OPW, it'd be worth looking into as well. The OPW is the Office of Public Work, and they
Yeah.
usually do apprenticeship, paid apprenticeships. Now, they're not, it's 2 years, but you're a student and you're getting paid some money for it. But usually, when you qualify, you're very specialised and you're paid by the OPW, which is a public sector job, to carry out remedial works and repair works on listed buildings. So
Oh wow.
you don't have
Yeah.
money. It's something like a really interesting job to
Very
look.
interesting, yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
That's
Again,
really
professional
interesting, isn't it,
work.
guys? Yeah. So look, thank you so much, Ruth, again.
Okay, and the very best.
Okay, lovely. It was lovely seeing you. Lovely talking to you. I'll talk to you privately in a while. And thank you so much. Thank you so much.
No problem.
God
Okay.
bless. Bye bye. Take care. Bye bye.